find all angles x that satisfy cosine of x minus pi over 5 plus 1 is equal to 0. One way to solve this equation is to start with the equation as it is. And subtract 1 from both sides of the equation. When you subtract 1 from the left-hand side of the equation, you get the cosine of x minus pi over 5. When you subtract 1 from the right-hand side of the equation, you get a negative 1. So this is essentially asking, when is the cosine function equal to negative 1? Let's go to the winding function. What does the cosine function do? The cosine function starts at 1 at this particular position right here. It goes to 0, and then it is negative 1 at this point right here. So let me go ahead and label that point. And that is the point that corresponds to the angle pi. And the coordinates of that point are negative 1, which is the first component, which is the cosine, and 0. So once you have that in place, when you return to this equation right here, what you can say is the angle, which is x minus pi over 5, is equal to pi. Again, we're trying to find x, and so solving this equation here for x, it's done by adding pi over 5 to both sides of the equation. When you add pi over 5 to the left-hand side of the equation, you just get x. When you add pi over 5 to the right-hand side of the equation, you get 6/5 pi. Now, the original problem says find all angles x that satisfy. This is just one angle here that satisfies this. Turns out if you take and add any multiple of 2 pi to this, that will also satisfy the equation. So that can be written as x is equal to 6 pi over 5 plus 2 pi times n, where n is an integer. And so where are all of these solutions? Well, when n is equal to 0, you get the solution 6 pi over 5, and 6 pi over 5 is just slightly larger than pi. So if you start right here, this far around the winding function is pi. If you go a little bit further, you'll get this point right here, and that is 6 pi divided by 5. Basically 1.2 divided by 5. Well, that's when n is equal to 0. What happens when n equals 1? You get 2 pi plus 6 pi over 5. And that's basically starting here, going around the circle once, that's your 2 pi, and coming back to here. That's a solution. What happens when n is equal to 2? When n is equal to 2, you get 4 pi plus 6 pi over 5. And what that is that is going around the circle twice for the 4 pi, and then coming back around to 6 pi over 5. So this gives you all of the solutions that satisfy the original equation.